Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project, session number 236. My name is Glenn Gers, and I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to let you look over my shoulder, share my screen as I write a script. I do this in order to teach a part of screenwriting that I think is kind of undertaught, which is the actual process of getting it written. Not talking about how to write a great script, not talking about how to write a script that will sell. I am just talking about the process by which you take thoughts and feelings and characters and ideas and you work them into an idea, into an outline, into a rough draft, revise that draft, get it to where people can read it. That process tends to be more or less the same for each writer as they go through project to project. Every project is different. Every writer is different. I am not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. It's just some stuff I figured out for myself in my 25-year career writing for TV and movies. I didn't have any place where somebody taught me, and I thought on my way out of the business, I would just drop this behind me in case it is useful for any of you. That's really all this is. The main things that I have to teach are actually here in the first 3 playlists on my channel. The Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These are the places where I have tried to condense down what I think about a certain topic into a 10-minute lesson. The name of that topic, the idea that I'm trying to wrestle with, will always be big and bold in the thumbnail of that video so that you can just look through the list and go, oh, that's something I might be interested in learning about. Flashbacks, genre, dramatic action, outlining. And what I've tried to do is just give you simple techniques and tools and skills. That's really what I have to do. I do not have a grand unified theory. I do not think there is only one way to do this. I do not think that there's only one way to write a good script, that there is such a thing as a one good or best movie or show. It's just a question of tools that you have in your toolbox when you approach it your way with your subject. So that's all I'm trying to give you, some tools, some things that you can use when you are working facing the blank page. Hello, Thumper, I for one welcome our robot overlords as long as their programming is open source. Don't you though? That's what I believe. There is nothing wrong with a little robot overlordlingness. Hi, Nathan. Good to see you. Hi, Butte. Ratlatoso. Finally, they changed the time zone to summer in Chile, so that's why I wasn't able to connect. Oh, I'm so sorry. I am glad that we have fixed that, although in a couple weeks, I believe, we are changing our time zone. I hope that doesn't mess you up. I've been working on my script. It's currently 91 pages for draft. All right, good for you. That is the thing. No matter what you are doing, getting that rough draft going is a crucial, vital, good step. Hello, Distract. Hello, Donna Nelson. Hi, Adam. They're awesome in the outro survey. Yes, yeah. All of my Adam is talking about the ends of all these videos. I have outtakes for my the things I messed up when I was recording them, just because we shouldn't take any of this too seriously. It's an art. It's supposed to be fun. We are supposed to enjoy ourselves. Okay, so midnight not in Butte, obviously, because Butte is not in Butte. Butte just is named Butte. Okay, so here's the deal. Today is going to be an interesting day because yesterday I reached the end of the latest pass through the draft of the script. In other words, I went from page 1 to page 66, and I tried to, sorry, I got an itch on my ear. I tried to smooth it, make it more readable, make it a draft that actually I could hand to someone. And yesterday, I got to the last page of that. Now, am I done? No. You have to keep going over it, over and over and over it. However, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's pretty readable now. So what I need to do is read it. I need to, and for me, often what I will do is I will print it out, because I believe it's not a bad idea to try and change your perspective on your own work. It can be things like changing the font, printing it out, reading on a different, reading on a different type of screen. Anything that you can do to change the way you see it, because the hardest thing is to actually see your own work. It is virtually impossible. All you see when you look at your own work is all the things you intended, all the things you fear, all the things that it took to get it to that place. You don't actually see the work itself. And so the hardest thing for any writer is to see their own work. It's one good reason to have something, people read it out loud if you can. That's a really good way. You abstract it from the page and you begin to get a sense of how it plays. But there's also a question of how does it read? You need to give it to somebody and it needs to be readable. So for me, I print it out. I know it's not the greatest thing. You need a printer, you need ink, which costs a lot. You need paper, which is not great for the trees, but I don't do it that often. So now and then I will print it out, read it through. Then strangely enough, I go back to the screen. I work on the screen. I don't usually write much on the page, but something about seeing it in that different form really helps. Actually changing the font is weirdly helpful too. Okay, so that's my next step. But in the meantime, I have to figure out having done that step, what am I going to do? What I'm going to be looking to do is this document here, the pitch document. And so I'm going to open that up. Whoa, okay, I made that too big. There we go. Okay. So this is a document which I am going to create, which would talk to this. If someone read the pilot script, they would say, cool, love the pilot. Where is the series going? What are the seasons like? What is the series arc as a whole like? How do you envision it? Not that you are locking into this. Things change. But the most important thing that you need to do is convey in a short period of time, a nice, readable, entertaining summary, what you think the story of the work as a whole is going to be. So I like to do that because if somebody says, oh, this is great, but what's the rest of it? I like to be able to hand them a thing and say, this is it. I like to talk through it, but that's it. So I need to work on that. I also need to look at this, which is my series outline. The series outline is basically where I took everything that I thought of that wasn't going to be in the pilot, but that I thought, oh, I will want to put that into the show. If I was ever writing the whole show, this would be the scrap pile of that outline. This would be the raw bits, anything I could think of I threw in there. So I need to look at that and figure out what's in there and what needs to go into the pitch document. All right. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, is looking at those. Having so much fun writing my script, laughing out loud. That is great. That is what you should be doing, Marital Latoso. You should be laughing at your own jokes. You should be scared by your own frights. It is really good. Congrats to Marital Latoso. Yes. Thumper, meanwhile, woke up on Sunday morning with a dream that would make a decent two-hander sci-fi short. Well, I'm not gonna get on board with the, if I can't do this, I'm not. But it does seem like you should write that. Yes. If you just for the practice of writing, even if you don't get it made, writing it seems worthwhile, especially since it came to you. What kind of things motivates you to get your projects done? All right, that is an interesting question. What motivates me to get my projects done? Which is different from what motivates me to start a project. Once I've started, the main thing that motivates me is the feeling of, oh, this would be good if I finished it. Not just like it would be morally good, it would be right, it would be a good thing to do. I mean, it actually, the thing itself would be good. I could show it to someone and they would go, oh, that's good. They would get the thrills from it, the laughs, whatever it is that it's trying to do. That's the main thing that motivates me, is the frustration that this thing that I can imagine is as yet uncreated. The feeling of I can't imagine this and then not be able to have it to show to someone so that they can have it, it just seems wrong. There is a part of me that's just like, oh, maybe I'll just imagine it and then I've had that fun and then I'm done. But because I'm a writer and because I've been doing it for a long time, there is a part of me that wants to do the work, to actually get it, to work it into a form that another person can see. And that is intimidating and difficult and scary. But once you've done it a lot of times, you're like, that's what I want. I want to make this thing that I just imagined. And that's a very big difference, imagining something and making something, very different. Imagination is its own pleasure. The work of making things is very often in conflict with the act of imagining things. And one of the things you need to do is kind of learn the process of imagining, of taking imagination and making something from it. So when you say what motivates me, that's the main thing that motivates me is, wow, I picture this and no one else will ever be able to see it unless I put it into a form they can enjoy, which requires a great deal of work and artistry and years of learning how to master that work and artistry. So that's it. Then the other things that motivate me often are, since I've been trying to be a professional writer for most of my life, for a long time it was, maybe this will get me to be a professional writer. And then once I was a professional writer, maybe this will get me money. So those also motivate me, is in the idea that nobody's going to give you money if you don't do the work. And it's nice to pay your bills. And at the moment, that was how I was paying my bills. So that was also motivating me. But the real question of what motivates you to get your projects done, the number one thing is this weird thing. It's an artist's thing. Most people don't have this of, I wish that this thing that is in my imagination could be physicalized to where someone else could take it into their imagination. That is the main thing that motivates me. And honestly, that is the main thing that keeps me going as I'm working. It's like, because every good line of dialogue or every good description or every good scene idea or whatever it is that you do in a script that's good, that adds to the pressure to finish it, because otherwise you've got this great patch of dialogue. If it's not in the context of a work that can be enjoyed, it's lost. So now you're not just losing something you imagined, you're actually losing something you worked on because you haven't finished its context. So that one of my main motives is, I got a little way down the track, I need to go all the way now or that's gone, which is one of the other reasons I urge all of you, when you have something in your heart or your mind, start to work on it, start to create, start to write it down, start to give it form. The more form you give it, the more that motivates you to finish it. So that is the answer to a very fine question, actually. What motivates you to get projects done? Okay, meanwhile, in a more practical sense, Nathan says, what does UPKP? And I will tell you, UPKP stands for Untitled Killer Project. Untitled Podcast Killer Project. That's it. I originally, until a good way into the script, I didn't have a title for this. So it was called Untitled Podcast Killer Project, because I had to call it something. I like to have the initials, the acronym of the project name, be whatever I call it as my file names on my computer. So in theory, I would go through and change these all to CC, but I think I'm just going to leave it as UPKP because it's stopping here. Oh, thank you. Also, Donna, yes, congratulations to me on getting that through that pass. That was cool. Yes, this is about Thumper's short. Think of it as a practice piece, but also how cool. That's a very practical practice piece. Hey, Burgundy, good to see you. You are very welcome, Distract. Okay, so let's talk about these documents. The series outline. Oh dear. What have we got here? Why is fit with? There we go. Bada boom. All right. Why, I ask? Okay, so what we've got here is I have 17 pages, apparently, of outline bits. A lot of this is actually bits of dialogue that I wrote that I later had to cut out. So what I'm going to do first, I think, is I'm going to just go through and organize this. And see, so like, I'll get to you in a second, Laura. That's a good question. So, boom, let's get rid of that. Okay, so this is going to be an event. Someone should go to the police. One of the crew should go to the police. Actually, I'm just going to go, who should go to the police? Okay. Okay, so that's just an event. This, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to make that look. All right. Boom. And then I'm going to say dialogue bits. I'm going to call that a section. Boom. Okay. Boom. 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 These are all dialogue bits. Okay. Now, cool idea. Okay. Now I have to. Oh, sorry. I seem to have somehow or other. No, I don't know how I did this. I don't know how I made this too big. So I don't know how to make it smaller. All right. Well, why is this zoomed in? Sorry, folks. Technical. Oh, I zoomed. There we go. Okay, there we go. So, since I messed up, I'm going to take a minute here to talk about Laura's question, which is, what's the difference between taking inspiration from someone's work and copying someone's work? This is a fascinating question. Okay, there's legal definition and there's moral definition. And the question is, I am not a lawyer, so I cannot say I have a legal definition of intellectual property theft. But I will say that I believe the Writers Guild actually weighs in on this. But there are certain specific things which are considered copyrightable. For instance, if you have a story, first of all, the story cannot be copyrighted. A story cannot be copyrighted. The expression of the story, the written version of the story. So therefore, if you decided to write the same exact story as The Great Gatsby, at a certain point, people would say, like if you just changed the names of The Great Gatsby and then said, I wrote a new story, people would say, look, this scene is the same as that scene in their book. So one thing you want to do is say that details change would not be something you can take inspiration from. You can't, like if, for instance, spoilers on The Great Gatsby, by the way, if that comes up, although honestly, great story, whether you know the spoilers or not. Jay Gatsby is a bootlegger. He is a very, very rich man. The sources of his wealth are not clearly known, although we get hints. There are rumors that Nick, the narrator, hears, and there's a meeting, business meeting with Meyer Wolfsheim, who is a Jewish gangster who is apparently working with Gatsby. The point about all this is that these are like, it is not copyrightable. It is not, you can't own the idea of a person who is rich and nobody knows the sources of their money. So I would say, first of all, obviously, if you have identical details, that is going to be a problem. If you have followed too much of, like, if your gangster story includes that he had a lost love, that when he was in the army, he met a rich girl and she fell in love with him, not knowing he was poor because he was in uniform. Like, if all of the details of the story are if all of the steps of the story, even if not the details, are the same, it is copying. If you simply take the idea of a part of it, for instance, someone who meets early in their life and through a misunderstanding or a masquerading convinces someone that they are an eligible suitor for them when they're not, that's a thing you could take. It wouldn't be just The Great Gatsby. I guess the answer is, if you have taken too many specifics or too much of the story incidents, then you would be copying. If, on the other hand, you are taking a piece and you are transmuting it, changing it, so that you have, like, if I decided to do Great Gatsby, but I was doing it through the eyes of the gangster, and so we're only seeing parts of the story, through the eyes of a servant. In theory, now this is a tricky one. I don't know the legal ramifications of that if you do that with copyrighted work, but I believe you cannot. Although, is it fair use? I don't know. I do know that radically rethinking something tends to allow you more use of it. This is a very interesting question. Inspiration means it literally means breath of life. But what it really means is you are making a variation, a change on that work, not just a superficial change, but a substantially different interpretation of those events or those characters. I would say the main thing about copying is if you are using too many details or too many characters or too many steps from the story and they are unmixed with other elements, you are copying. If you decide to take the idea of the romance of Gatsby and Daisy and you put it into high school, you probably could get away with it because you'd have to translate so much of it that a story, an idea, a character cannot be copyrighted. The specific character of Luke Skywalker can be copyrighted. On the other hand, if you had a guy who was just like Luke Skywalker but named, Freddy Spaceman, and he happened to be an orphan who grows up on a desolate planet but finds out that he's a chosen one. Well, I mean, in a way, isn't that kind of the story of Neo in the Matrix? So aren't Neo and Luke kind of the same? Is that copying? No. There's an essential element that is not copied. So the answer is, I am not speaking legally. I do not know if there's a legal definition. In fact, I do know, just weirdly, I read this book called Naked is the Best Disguise. It's not a great book, but the interesting thing about it is it's a investigation into the death of Sherlock Holmes. Halfway through the Sherlock Holmes stories, Conan Doyle got really tired of writing Sherlock Holmes, who was getting way too popular for Conan Doyle's liking, and so he killed off Sherlock Holmes. There was a story in which Sherlock Holmes dies in a fall off a cliff, clutching his arch nemesis. They both die. everyone was really upset. And at a certain point, Conan Doyle was like, okay, fine. And he brought him back. So this book, Naked is the Best Described, is about that subject. But it's written by a guy whose job was to look for larger issues or similarities in works that movie studios, like his was defending movie studios against claims of copying. And so someone would write in the studio, like sue the studio, and they would say, your movie, Mildred Pierce, well, stolen from a book, but sorry, adapted from a book. They paid for that. The point is, if there's a movie and it has a story, like The Matrix, and someone says, I wrote something just like The Matrix, the first thing that they do is they get somebody to go through and look at the elements that are the same and see if they go to a mythic earlier version, like the chosen one. There's been chosen ones in mythology and texts for hundreds, thousands of years. So therefore, having a story about the chosen one would not make it that you were copying The Matrix. So this guy's job happened to be that. I thought it was really interesting. Anyway, so that is all I have to say about inspiration and copying. The difference is copying is when you do not substantially change it, rethink it. Don't just change it like, oh, they're wearing a blue dress, and you say, oh, they're wearing a green dress. Substantially altering, rethinking, giving new meaning and context and feeling to those elements that you are inspired by is what will keep it from being copying. How's that? Okay. Hi, word charm. Artistic stealing. yeah. There's a book. Hold on. Hang on. One of my favorite books, Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It's a really great book about which is just full of helpful things about being creative. And one point is, every artistic work is stolen, as in influenced, as in inspired by other things. Some of those things are other artistic works. Some of those are like you're inspired, you're stealing from something that happened in your life, or it's a story you heard from someone else's life. That's part of creativity. The question is, what are you doing with it? Okay. How do you define action in a story? He wants to mention the dialogue section. And I don't quite understand that. I can explain that. I can explain that in several ways. The first way I'm going to explain it is to emphasize the wonderful value of this video that I did on this topic, because I spend a good 10 minutes detailing it in very well thought out ways. So I would definitely say the point about dialogue as action is pretty simple. An action is when a character, a person, does something to influence or change or make something happen, usually from another character. That is an action. An action is something that someone does to make something happen. Now, if you think about that, that action could be making a plan. That's an action. We would probably see the making of the plan in terms of them sitting and writing it down, or as they often do in movies nowadays, writing it on a window, because for some reason that's a good plan. But the main thing is, and the action can be making a decision. You can be sitting down and thinking and coming to a decision, and that's an action, because at the end of that process of making the decision, you then take a different path. So the answer is, I define action as someone doing something which has an intended effect in the world. Now that effect, like making a decision, the effect will be, I will take a different path when I stand up from sitting thinking about this. And that's cool. There are some great scenes where someone just sits and thinks, and they get up and they grab their keys, and we know, oh, they're going out to do the thing. So that scene, that's an action. They're making a decision. But dialogue is definitely an action, because if you think about it, when you speak to someone, you are always trying to get them to do something, or trying to have an effect on them. Nobody speaks without that goal. And therefore the question is, what is the action of that dialogue? If someone is speaking, even if someone is just speaking, they're trying to make the other person laugh. They're trying to make fun of the other person. That's an action, because they are trying to do that. Will it succeed or not? Good question. All talk should be action. What happens is a lot of people will write dialogue because they want the audience to know something. That's not an action. In other words, if I'm saying, gee, there's an elevator at the top of the stairs that we need to take to get there. If I'm not saying that to someone for a reason, I'm just saying it so that the audience knows what's going to happen next, that's not an action. There are many, many ways that you can get information into action, but it's very important that you recognize that dialogue is not about information for the character. You have information as an author you may want to put into dialogue, but the person who's speaking is not speaking to inform the audience. If they want to inform another person in the room, if somebody walks into a room and says, hey, your car is going to be towed, that's information. I just saw that your car is going to be towed. But they're saying it because they want that person to go out and move their car. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, thank you, Martlotoso. Not legal advice. Yes, chosen ones, indeed. Thank you. Yes, people always compare those. Indeed, indeed. Okay. Look how many movies based on Philip K. Yes, it's more, absolutely. That is absolutely true. Basically, the thing is, also, this is really important. Copying and copyright are very different. Copyright is a legal obligation to contractually pay someone if you take their work and use it. Copying is, just they did that. Like Shakespeare copied all of his stories. I believe most of his plays were based on other stories or plays. That's okay. It's not wrong to copy if you do something with it. The question of copying is like in grade school, when little children get very upset at somebody copying. Oh, I did a tree and he's drawing a tree. He's copying me. Well, if you were a smart third grader, you say, no, I was inspired by you. The answer is copying is part of art. Copying in the sense of seeing and using is part of art. Nothing wrong with it. Copyright has to do with whether or not it was at least in America, I believe it's 75 years. If it was published within the last 75 years, you have a legal obligation to pay for and announce that you have taken their material. Okay. So even in a scene where the character camera spins 360 around them, showing in the background how time passes while a character is frozen, could be considered an action. Absolutely. Yes, it definitely could be. Yeah. It depends on, that's tricky because the character is frozen, and in that case, the action is by the filmmaker. And so it would depend. But yes, the thing about a scene like that is, what is the filmmaker trying to do? And also, how does the camera spinning show time passing? Essentially, the question there would be, how is time, are they physically traveling through time, or are we being told that some time has passed? You know what I'm saying? For instance, to change from the camera spinning 360, if you in old movies, sometimes to show time passing, they would show a calendar, and then you would see the pages of the calendar sort of blown by the wind until they land on another year. That was simply the film stopping the action to speak directly to the audience, saying, hey, time is passing. That's not dramatic action. That is a film talking directly to the audience. Hello, Nacho. Um, I do not know. I am not legal advice. I do not know. I do not know if it's the life of the author plus 75 years, or maybe I believe it is the date of publication plus 75 years, but I really don't know. To simplify, you're saying that both action and dialogue are the means by which a character gets something they want, so when they are both inherently active. Yes, that is 100% what I'm saying. Absolutely. Anything somebody does, including remaining silent, could, like somebody refusing to answer a question can be an action, the action of refusing to answer. You can only play that action so long before it gets boring, but you can only play any action. You can only play a gunfight between two characters so long before it gets boring. I mean, it's like, yeah, fine, stop shooting. So the answer is action is not inherently interesting. Dramatic action in which something is attempting to be changed, and when you make that attempt, if you fail in that attempt, you try something else. That's what makes it interesting. Repeating an action over and over is not going to be particularly dramatic. Okay. All right. So what I'm just doing now is, okay, I'm just reading through this and saying, okay, okay, so this is interesting. Cool idea. George rigged the place for surveillance. That is interesting. Okay, so I'm just cleaning this up, but no one knows. Okay. So I'm now, cool idea. George rigged the place for surveillance to catch the murderer, but no one knows. That is a cool idea. So I'm going to take all this dialogue. I'm going to move it. Whoa, there we go. Dialogue bits. Ba-doom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I'm going to put the dialogue bits all the way at the end, because that way I just know the end has dialogue bits. Okay, because now I can go back here. Yeah, someone should go. See this. Okay. So in fact, the point about this is this. So when I give an event a name in an outline, I try possible way. I try to make sure that this thing in the outline, the headline of the outline, is the point of the item, even if it's long and complicated. Okay. Boom. Be sure they make a Scooby-Doo joke. Okay. Yes. Let me just see. I look healthy and on. Good. I am glad. I think it's the white shirt. What kind of exercise do you do and how do you help with the writing? Okay, I am not I'm not an exemplar of exercise and health. I wish I was. I like to walk. I'm a big fan of walking. I ride my bicycle. I have a home stable bike for days that I cannot go riding my bicycle. And now and then I'll do some jumping jacks and stuff like that. I wish I used the ball more often. I forget to, but it is good. It is good if you guys don't have one of these things. They're very useful instead of your chair. If you sit on one of those, it requires your muscles to do more work because you have to keep it balanced. And you know what? Let's do it now. All right, fine. You've shamed me. You've shamed me into using it. Okay. So I'm going to be bouncing a bit. But the point is now I have to, my legs and back need to be a little more active to keep me from going, whoa. And that's a healthy thing. It may make noise. I apologize if it does. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay. You need not legal advice button to appear every time you linger on these. Yes, yes. In fact, let's make one right now. Not legal ad. Let's choose a. Okay, let's make it. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, I will save this and use it often. Okay. Boom. Good. All right. How did George know he was going to get killed? Well, he set out to get killed. Oh, I'm probably going to lose my quality of my miking if I use the ball. But for the next 20 minutes, that's what we're going to do. So the answer is George. The story is that, and it's sort of revealed in this episode, George was attempting to do a true crime podcast in which he solved an unsolved murder. The problem was he couldn't do it. So he decided what he was going to do was claim he had solved it in the hopes of frightening and the killer into coming after him, because that would lure the killer out and, in theory, identify the killer. So he was basically using himself as bait by claiming he had solved a crime that he had not solved. So he knew that it was possible that instead of catching the killer would actually kill him. And if so, he was willing to sacrifice himself in order to do that, because he was also kind of clearly depressed and a little crazy. But he decided that it was okay with him if he got murdered in order to make a podcast. I do not recommend any of that kind of thinking, but that's who George was. So the answer is that's how he knew he was going to get killed. Did he defend himself? No, because he was poisoned. Okay. All right. So. Okay. Boom. Okay. We need to come up with some fake outs, bad leads, and false suspects. This is just a thing to do. Hi, Hunter. Purchase a screen in person. Great. I am glad. I hope it works out. Different people like different ones. The main thing for any software is, does it work for you? Do you interface well? Does it make it easier for you to write and you think less about the software and more about the content? Because that's what matters. This is interesting. So now we have one where somebody does go to the police. We've already got that. So now let's do. Okay, so that's okay. So this one, the make a Scooby-Doo, that's just a, hey, don't forget to do that. Okay, so now, boom, boom. Okay, yes, we need to see the work off. Okay, so that's one. Okay, backstory. Xena killing George. Let's see. Moons of Madness says fade in is good, Hunter. So we've got a recommendation. Excellent. And by the way, Moons of Madness, this is exactly what I think is the right way to judge. It works great for what I need. That's the secret. That's the goal of all things, of all tools. Does it work great for what you need it to do? Hello, local shopkeeper. Found you today. Saw some parts of your interview. Oh, thank you. I am very, very glad. Thank you for coming. Welcome. I'm going to be here for another 15 minutes today. Here every afternoon at this time, 3 p.m. Pacific time, if you are in the mood. But the main thing, once again, I urge you. Let's just hype this stuff. These first 3 playlists on my site: Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. It's about 30 videos all told. Each one is about 10 minutes long, 7 to 10 minutes. Each one has a topic, for instance, instinct, or thinking in scenes, or use what you have. That topic is what I consider a useful tool or skill that I try to break down into really, really actionable, as they say in the world today, useful things. So I urge you, local shopkeeper, welcome. I urge you to check out the first 3 playlists. That's where all the goodies are. This is fun. I love spending time and talking to you guys. But my actual things I've thought of to teach you are there. I wanted to sort of create essentially like a cookbook, like a how-to book, but in the form of videos. That's what that is. And a mix and match. It's not like you have to watch through in a certain order. Just like take this one, do with them what you will. Oh, Najo does fade in too. Great. What's this? Fade in. Well, from what I understand, fade in is a specific screenwriting software, whereas Word, you would have to format the different screenwriting formatting requirements. And so therefore it's sort of pre-formatted specifically for screenwriting. You can, and in fact I did for over a decade before I got Final Draft, I worked in word processing on the Apple computer, and I just made a format that worked for me to do screenwriting. Okay. Yeah, less time fussing, more time. That is the goal. I would not, because I don't know enough. Would I ever do a video on screenwriting software? I don't know enough. I have used Final Draft since around 2000, about the past 20 years. And therefore, I don't know what the others are like. I do know, and I have done a whole video on format. It's called Script Format Made Easy, and I urge you to look at that, because I explain what the point of format is, to understand the purpose of the format. Like these things that are in format have served specific purposes, and some of them are very, very unimportant. These slug lines, the idea of that, like interior, castle, knight, that's really, really unimportant to screenwriting. You have to do it because it's the required for the organizational of screenwriting, of screen production companies. They want that, and it helps you define scene beginnings and ends. But those are not important to the creativity. The important things to the creativity is to understand the difference between description and dialogue. And that is the key, is that they're breaking down your writing into it's either one or the other, and you have to balance out the proportions of those, and you have to understand that they are, as I discussed earlier, the action of dialogue is in the dialogue, so you want it in dialogue format, and you want to understand that it is somebody speaking to take an action. So that's the purpose of format. There's only 6 basic parts of format. You don't need to spend a lot of time on format. Everything you need to know is here, and it is quite possible to do this without software. You can do it. I mean, I used to do it with a typewriter. Okay, before there was screenwriting software, there was a typewriter, and I wrote scripts on a typewriter. You can do that. You can do it in word processing. You can do it in Word, in Google Docs, in Pages. It doesn't matter. Do not get hung up on the technology when you're talking about screenwriting, because it's just writing. You're just writing, and the important thing is the story, the characters, the words you choose. Cool. Yes, I'm sorry about that midnight thing. Well, I completely understand. You're in England. Donna's here is in Australia. Thank you, Laura. The important. Also really important. These things are there. Once I sign off, it goes directly to the page, and you can find them and you can watch them anytime, day or night. You can't ask me a question directly then, but you can watch them anytime. Okay. Okay, so this is a question we don't need to ask. Xena poisons George. That's backstory. The bar George worked in. Okay, that is an event, or several. So I'm putting it as event. Okay. Eric Roth still uses a DOS program as Captain 40 Pages. Yes. Yeah, Eric Roth can afford to do that, and Eric Roth is a phenomenal scriptwriter. But like me, he's old, and unlike me, he has stayed with the old software. Yeah, everyone, in one of my other videos, I talk about the fact that Nabokov wrote his novels on index cards. He didn't write them on paper. He didn't write them on a typewriter. He wrote them in pencil on an index cards, which was a way of focusing on the paragraph, the section of text, which is pretty poet centered and brilliant. And he certainly wrote well, so good on you, Nabokov. But the point is, different people write different ways. It's an amalgam of how you come into it and what your particular brain functions do well with, and your ability to change up and learn. It's there's no right or wrong as long as you're getting it done. It's cool. Drop a Q in the C and expect an A. Yes, absolutely. You can ask questions in the comments anytime. You can also go to writingforscreens.com and click on Contact Me. There's a little form there that will send me an email. Here's the deal. At a certain point, I am going to stop answering questions because I'm going to be doing less of this. However, for the next few months, certainly, if you have a question and you are not watching this live and you want to ask me a question, first of all, put it in the comments. I see every single comment. I try to respond to every single one. But if you want to ask me a question, just contact me on my website, send me an email, and I will try to answer it as soon as possible, possibly just directly by email or possibly here. Okay. Yeah, use Google Docs for scripts is completely fine. There's lots and lots of different ways. So some good questions and a fine exploration of many topics as we wind down our hour. Thank you all for being here. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, go write something.